Welcome to the Big Data Analytics Canada Summit webinar. My name is Jeremy Berman, and I am the producer of what will be the 11th edition of Canada's largest purely data analytics summit. This engaging conversation is meant to give you an insight into some of the hugely experienced speakers that we have headlining our summit on the 4th and 5th of June in Toronto. It is also meant to explore our core theme for the event, which is around the future of democratization. As you all know, competition between companies is fierce, and there's never been a stronger need for companies to innovate. The need to create more personalized experiences and products through data, enabling efficient access to data, and more efficient data operations in general. DeepSeek has opened our eyes to the opportunities around the democratization of AI tools and developing in-house AI software. Putting data in the hands of our employees who are closest to our customers' problems has always been the goal, but it comes with huge risks. Risk to brand, data privacy, security, and the ethics of the AI programs that we're looking to develop. Governance is the critical tool which enables organizations to find the optimum balance between innovation on one hand and safeguarding on the other. Given the huge importance of governance, we have brought in Keith Janser, who is the CEO of the Digital Governance Council, to moderate this conversation. Before I hand it over to Keith, I wanted to say thank you for joining us, and I look forward to welcoming you at the 11th Big Data Analytics Canada Summit in Toronto on the 4th and 5th of June. Keith, over to you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today and to be alongside my esteemed panelists. As Jeremy describes, data democratization is about making data accessible, usable, and valuable across an organization. When it's done right, it can fuel innovation, enhance decision-making, and create a data-driven culture. However, as mentioned, there raises challenges around the technology, the governance, and security. So let's dive right in with our panel and ask one key question to kind of kick us off here. And perhaps your thoughts, David, to kick us off is, what is the biggest challenges your company faces when democratizing data?
Thanks very much, Keith, and looking forward to the conversation. For us, given the nature of our business, briefly, Dayforce is a large human capital management platform software company. So we have thousands and thousands of customers, over 7,000, and all that rich employee data from companies as large as hundreds of thousands to smaller in the hundreds. So one of the biggest challenges we always look at is, whose data is it really? And really the considerations around the fact that we have some of the most sensitive data you can have related to employees, and the ethics and privacy that go along with that are the critical part that really drives our thinking around the appropriate use of that data.
Very good. Eric, perhaps to follow on that, challenges from a BMO perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So I think that, sorry, Keith. So to build on some of the things that David said, because I think it certainly resonates. From my own perspective and where I sit in the organization, and for everyone's context, I lead the enterprise data science and AI team. We're a function that enables and supports the different analytics functions and business units with data science, machine learning, AI across the organization. I'd say that to levels that the bank has been doing machine learning and AI and consuming data for a long time. There has been, in terms of the appetite for the democratization of it, people getting their hands on it, certainly a shift, I'd say, in the context of AI in the past couple of years. As it's the before ChatGPT and the after ChatGPT kind of era. And I think part of the reason for that shift is because of the capability and also some, frankly, excellent product decision design that OpenAI has taken, so that business users and non-technical folks can actually get it, right? And so that's increased their appetite and desire to be able to get access to data, to be able to consume it and to drive business insights. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, though, because you have to make sure that certainly it's done responsibly and ethically and all these kinds of things. You also there's a significant education piece to this as well, because they have to understand what the capability really is and what it's able to do, and frankly, what it's also not able to do. And so I think it's, those are the things when we talk about challenges. There's a lot of appetite, so meeting that appetite, but also being able to manage that in a responsible, ethical, uplifting kind of way.
That's great. And Iris, from your perspective, when we talk about some of the ubiquity of the type of, that AI technologies have begun to bring, and the kind of accessible nature to which, and the data needed to train and to provide for the kind of insights to make decision making, I guess, from your perspective, what challenges is your organization facing when it comes to data democratization?
Yeah, thank you, Keith. So my team leads the enterprise analytics and AI strategy and design architecture. So we're seeing, similarly to the other folks on the panel mentioned, a lot of appetite in terms of getting access to these tools and the ability to implement their tools and the solutions that's relevant to specific business units and their own context. We are seeing that contrary to this, or alongside this appetite, there is a gap in literacy. So just to add on the education aspect that Eric mentioned, there is the education in terms of what it means for the tools to be ready to be democratized, because obviously we want to avoid the garbage in, garbage out situation, but also the skill sets in terms of how to do the right things, how to build the right solutions, and how to know what to avoid doing. Like, speaking of some of the governance pieces or the guardrails that need to be in place, and educating people around that, and also leveraging the right tools. So that's the more technical aspect of it. So in terms of education, it's first and foremost about understanding the business value, the people and process aspect of it, and then we go into technology and strategy, and wrapping all of that with governance, say policies or guardrails and guidelines, so that people can take all of the literacy improvement over time and use that to build the right things with hopefully the least amount of time. So that is definitely a challenge in our organization, and I think in the industry in general.
Over to you, Jeff. Any thoughts on this from your perspective? Certainly, three largely respected organizations having shared some critical insights on some of these challenges. Is there anything from your perspective that either further, adds to and/or something that's been missed from thus far with respect to the conversation around challenges?
Yeah, no, for sure. For us, it's mainly about balancing agility and governance. Like, nowadays, everybody just wants to move faster and faster. If we take this 15 years ago, I would have had an on-prem database managed by a centralized team with fewer data literate analysts. Today, the majority of my analysts are data literate. We have more teams that are decentralized, just creating little data repositories or large data repositories. And then the added complexity too is they're all now in cloud-based units that could be in different regions across the world. All that is amazing and awesome, but then when you try to layer that into with the governance aspect to it, it's a little bit of a fine balance. And then at the same time, it's so easy to do that people want to move as quickly as possible, so that governance is only seen as slowing them down per se. So now it's trying to put the right kind of guardrail so the Ferrari can go as fast as it can without crashing. But
considering the size of all your respective organizations, you're all quite large organizations, and But you have supply chains, of course, and partnerships and arrangements with many small enterprises. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, do any of these challenges that you're facing, something that you're also hearing within smaller enterprises that potentially you do business with or partner with, or even some of your customers that you're dealing with, around their use of data and the data democratization there? I don't know if there's any thoughts or perspectives just with respect to the diverse audience that we have with us today as well. The kind of small, medium business, are you finding that these challenges are just as much what is being faced by, and or are those challenges, or are there some unique challenges that you're finding just in relationship to your partnerships and with your respective customers? So I don't know, Eric, if you want to first chime in on whether or not, from your perspective, the kind of small, medium business lens, are you finding that the challenges are much equal to what's been presented by way of insights, or are you finding that there's some unique and specifics to the kind of challenges around data democratization for the smaller enterprises?
Yeah, so most of my context is obviously in the larger enterprise side. I'd say, where we're engaging with vendors that may be of various sizes, like that's sort of the intersection that I'll speak to, and certainly there's a need. Like, so as we're talking about responsible and ethics and governance kinds of things, that's all now baked into the procurement and the risk assessments that are done as these suppliers are being thought of and considered as part of the engagement. So it is very much like an end-to-end thinking that's taking place.
Oh, great. Iris, you have any thoughts on that?
I'm more drawing upon my consulting days where I worked with some medium to small size companies. So these problems and challenges that we have highlighted definitely are very relevant in small to medium sized enterprises. But in a lot of these organizations, they're masked by how small the teams are. So whenever we have, say, governance challenges, then a lot of the teams can just sit together, the entire group or the entire company, even at times, to just talk it through. Large organizations don't really have that luxury, so these problems are more revealed. But I think they're just as important to pay attention to in small to medium-sized organizations, because if they want to grow, if they want to keep on the trajectory of continuous improvement, then these problems that are masked today will be revealed very quickly in the future.
Yeah, and David, from Dayforce, a payroll company, really B2B in many respects to the kind of customers that you have and that you're engaging with, and certainly with respect to their own data sets and being able to build tools from and perhaps democratize that data for the benefit back to your customers with respect to. I'm just wondering if you have any insights in relation to the data sets that you, by way of your organization and its employees, are able to collect, and then how do you address the sort of privacy and governance challenges associated with the use of that data to further improve services for your customers, while at the same time recognizing that it's in some way their data? So it'd be great to hear some thoughts and perspectives that you have on that front.
No, I think it is a challenge, right? It all goes back to really how robust your governance and accountability is. Touching on what Eric and Iris were already talking about, one of the things we're really focused on is that privacy by design approach to data. So it is our customers' data. So we have you're seeing this in the vendor community a lot, where you almost have to opt out, not opt in. So for us, everything is about, it is the customer's data. We contract with the customer, and we are explicit about contracting with the right where that customer grants us the ability to do so, to use their data in a de-identified environment, commingled with other customers. So that's the approach that we've taken from that standpoint responsibly, to really be able to ensure that the data we're using is in a state, is commingled in that state, that allows us to build new, let's say, models. I'd say more traditional models, going back to Eric's pre and post GPT era. But if we're building models around work energy or flight risk or things of that nature, or turnover rates, we can build it on that data and bring that model back to the customers in general, which benefits them. But we can protect that data in the way that we're building the models, so the models are more generalized and, arguably speaking, always with permission expressly granted. And I think that's a big part that, to your earlier point, with small, medium, and large, because we cut across those enterprises, most of them don't have that kind of robust governance and accountability. And so what you have is a lot of bring your own AI to work. You have the inability to potentially track or see that people are using or potentially putting corporate data into systems that shouldn't be populated with that. So I think the larger enterprise have that more robust capability to provide guidance around that. The smaller mid-sized organizations have to be very wary of how data leakage can happen in their organization. So for us, it's all about express permission. And we do have models per client as well when you look at workforce management. And that is only for the customer's benefit for, let's say, labor planning. So it does cut across a number of different areas from that point of view. Different for generative, I can talk about that later, but definitely very careful about that.
No, it's very interesting. It's kind of, we're kind of peeling back an onion, and hopefully we're not all tearing up as of yet as we kind of unravel some of these challenges that organizations are faced. We're looking at this from many different vantage points as well, like with respect to these challenges on small enterprises or even within your respective businesses. We heard kind of the B2B, the B as a customer. We've heard, Eric from the vendor relationship within supply, and with Iris from consulting days, just the small, medium business itself. So Jeff, kind of turning to you from a Bell Canada, you're more of a B to C. So you got a bunch of customer data and something that potentially could be of value back to your customers. I'm just wondering, from your kind of vantage point and perspective, the data democratization piece of this and providing that data to be accessible not only across your organization, but then ultimately to your customer base to further improve their services and interactions. Do you have thoughts, perspectives on what potentially your customers are facing by way of challenges in terms of getting access to the kind of insights and or data to be able to make better decisions with respect to how they're even engaging with respective companies like your own?
It's an interesting thought. We've tried to put a big focus on keeping that data secure and not trying to leverage it for any sort of monetization. If anything, it's used to improve that customer experience, like you said. So there's a big focus on leveraging that to make it right or make it better for the customers to sort of identify where their pain points are. Where we kind of shied away from is trying to use that in any sort of monetization. That said, to build a little bit off of what the others are saying too, was like part of Bell's focus is a massive B2B function, so a Bell Business Markets function. We probably started a big push within that area across data and AI over the last year to expand that practice. The original thought was the biggest thing that would explode was all this demand from Gen AI. But on the contrary, the biggest thing or the biggest demand that's come out of it are data and AI advisory engagements to kind of understand where the respective company is in their data journey. So I would say to those out there that are a little paranoid saying like, oh my gosh, it sounds like everybody's so much further ahead than I don't think it's quite the case. I think a lot of us at the bigger organizations, we have tons and tons of people to focus specifically on these narrow areas of, I'm sure BMO has a number of people who are focused primarily on data security and data privacy, whereas that small and medium organization doesn't have that bandwidth and they don't have that scale. So what they do is then a lot of them are now leveraging these engagements to put together these different data and AI policies. So rest assured, if you're out there, it's not just you. That's a little trying to put something together. So.
Oh, that's great. And it kind of moves us in the direction of, okay, we face some of these challenges. There's certainly opportunities with it. I would imagine that much of the opportunities of democratizing the data, like we've alluded to some of it, I think, with respect to just providing greater services back to your respective customers, also, enhancing the decision making within your organization. So I don't know, Iris, if you want to kind of kick this off on from an opportunities perspective, if we were to get this right and we were able to democratize data in such form that it's as accessible and as valuable as it, you could say, as intended, if you will, how can organizations in fact maximize this and the kind of opportunities from that?
Yeah. So in terms of maximizing the opportunities as intended, obviously, if we get data and tools into the hands of the right people who understand their business needs the best, and also help them accelerate their insights extraction, then they can make better decisions, then they can understand their own clients, if you will, better, whether it's a marketing team dealing with their customers or financial teams dealing with their various audit partners. That is in itself a really good way of extracting opportunities out of data and AI democratization. One other thing we have discovered is that if we keep it flexible and provide, given that we have certain governance guardrails in place, we provide sandboxes and opportunities for different teams to explore the data and AI landscape within the organization. Then we have more eyes on the data. Then teams start to form different perspectives for the same data set that traditionally maybe we only have one technical team working on it. So now we have opportunities to combine diverse data sets to understand, let's say, customer behavior, potential revenue opportunities, and potential risks from a safety and also audit perspectives. So that's something that we have discovered that was not so much as intended purposes of opportunities, but that's something that has provided huge value to the entire organization.
That's great, and there's been hints of AI and the connection between data and AI, and certainly with democratization, if it's as accessible as it potentially could be, not only do your employees potentially benefit from, but the AI and the models themselves could benefit from. So I'm wondering, perhaps, Jeff, from an opportunities point of view, what are you finding when it comes to providing greater access to the data, and perhaps if you have some insights associated to this, the kind of ubiquity of AI, noting that your respective organizations certainly are using and or adopting at various levels of maturity. I suspect some of our audience may not even be quite there yet. So, in terms of the data itself and providing that, making it as accessible as possible. Just any insights you have on the kind of opportunities that organizations have in addressing that and maximizing it?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's sort of, I don't know, like data and data science 101 of creating relationships and finding correlations. So again, if you take this years back, you would have been maybe a data analyst in a specific business unit. So for us, let's say I'm a specific data analyst within my field services or my technician business unit, and I could see a bunch of failures happening maybe, or a bunch of tickets that are getting created for different customers. Now with this democratization, that analyst will typically have access to call data into the call center, to network data to see where outages are. And they could use that to kind of triangulate issues a lot better than they would in the past, where you were focused on that one silo of information, and just moving data around from place to place was a little more challenging. So now what it's done is it's been obviously years now, this isn't a new concept, but allowing people to get as much access in a safe manner has been allowed them to create these crazy relationships and data that they would have probably never seen before, specific to their singular BU. I'm sure in all the folks here, whether it's banking or anything else, it's the same idea where, your consumer banking customers and relating that with call center and credit card information, you could provide all kinds of value for both yourself internally and those customers themselves. So keeping people out of harm's way and keeping it safe and ethical and everything else has been great, and it's kind of enabled this enormous kind of relationship building across the data.
Perhaps Eric, on that notion, Jeff referred to banks, so I'm coming naturally to you from a banking perspective. But the kind of how best do organizations govern out of silos? Because certainly with respect to even data within respective databases, and potentially they're disparate and not connected, the linkages aren't there, and those sorts of things. So further democratizing it. Just wondering from your perspective, from a governance point of view, how has your organization potentially or is working on breaking down some of those silos to make it as accessible, and how what kind of governance model are you finding most adaptive to realize the kind of maximum benefits from being able to democratize the data? And David, I'll come to you with the same question following Eric.
Sure. So I think that having core, well understood governance processes that support fundamentally scaled infrastructure is a core enabler. And so when, for instance, so I'll give you a couple of examples. So one, there's a common data access patterns for accessing various of the data lakes or data hubs that people can use. And I'll say too, just in terms of like how it's being thought of, we think of data access as tied to an initiative. And so if someone on my team is looking to develop a model to do something, then they'll identify the data they need, they'll request access to it, and then use it for the duration of that project. But then it's removed, right? That access is removed at the end of the project because it's deemed that they no longer need it. And so there's a way of keeping a handle on on ensuring that only those that need access to the data actually only have it. The other part of it too is that I think Jeff made the comment on just scale and having a lot of people. We have a lot of people even in our risk functions and the sort of the oversight functions that we're subject to appropriately. So having the bodies constructed and the forums established so that, again, it's sort of clear as to where you go, but then you can go to one place. And we have a responsible AI forum when there's a new initiative that's being discussed that we go in front of to determine, is this even an appropriate thing that we should be doing? Is it being thought of in the appropriate way for the data and what we're trying to do? But then you go to that body and you have representation from legal and ethics and technology governance and data governance and like all these functions together so that you can get an answer quickly as to whether or not you should proceed or not. So I think like those kind of mechanisms, I think it's clarity and sort of consolidation of the governance guardrails where you can have them.
Well, certainly something you described there, Eric. And just before I go to you, David, just to ask Eric on that body you have that's helping when there's AI components and having legal perspective, technology governance perspective, these sorts of things. Certainly, there's a number of consensus-based standards that are beginning to hit markets where it's calling for these kind of bodies to serve as a function for providing the appropriate kind of risk mitigation to initiatives and these sorts of things, and being kind of multidisciplinary. I'm just curious with respect to what has been built within BMO. You talked about internal of legal and technology governance and some others. Is there any facet of that kind of body that also extends to perhaps your customers and/or others outside of BMO, or is it strictly from a governance perspective, internal within BMO making those decisions, or are you receiving any sort of external advisory in relation to that?
So certainly, I mean, the conversations, there's always a focus on, what are the external impacts. And so, for instance, I think David had made the comment too, one of the dimensions that gets evaluated in any of these conversations is consent. And did the customer, when their data was provided, was their express consent provided that it could be used for this purpose? And that's, one of the first questions that comes as part of the triage that goes in. So, that's always a core consideration as part of these conversations.
Oh, very good. David, do you have insights to add from a governance point of view and in relation to the kind of opportunity of making the data as accessible and ultimately to benefit back to the customers?
Yeah, I think going back to and double click on what Eric was talking about there, we have both an internal AI ethics team, which is chief privacy, which includes legal. We have my office as well, and looking at the data side. So there's that component. We also have an external counsel, arguably where we work with our customers, because I think differently for us, a lot of the consumption of our models, at least I'll talk about non-generative models, are for our customers. And so getting their perspective on something, Eric, you actually used the term the other day of can we versus should we, I think is an important context there that they look at. As it relates to democratization, I think there's a couple of things we've really focused on. It's quality of the data, which is the first thing. If you have disparate data, but everyone's responsible for their own quality, you can get different answers from different parts of the organization. I'm not sure that's the best of intentions. So we very much focus on that single version of the truth. So very much a hub for where the data from an AI point of view is brought in and then transformed in whatever capacity is necessary to use to build from there. And the other thing I think we do when we focus on it is we have a common platform for which our data science teams and others use this platform, not only for the development so that you're looking at bias testing, you're looking at all those other aspects of model quality and things of that nature, but even deployment and then monitoring for deployment is part of our process. So I think there's a whole end-to-end, which is going to be a little bit different depending on the sophistication of the organization. And I know in our case, we even do third-party external audits because a lot of our customers are in the EU and we're subject to the EU AI Act as well. So we have to look at model complexity, model risk, and things of that nature. So there's a lot of considerations. So I think going to Jeff's earlier comment, it's a building block for many companies. If you feel like everyone's there, guess what? They're not. I think the education part is so critical to this, and then thinking through carefully how you make that data available, as Iris was talking about as well, and being very mindful of that are just a few of the concepts that have really, for us, having been doing this for years now, a number of years, it's just those are the kind of foundational pieces that I think are important to any organization.
That's great. And to that point, and from the earlier conversation around the challenges of talking about education, so let's take this opportunity. The audience with us today, you have 4 exceptional experts in their respective domains here with you, certainly prepared to answer questions and share their insights and help to educate around data democratization and what their respective organizations are doing. So I would ask if you have particular questions, by all means, do ask, and we'll be sure to have them answer accordingly. So take the time now. I will move into kind of the latter end of the conversation here, and that's really about the key takeaways. So if there are particulars from our audience that you're looking to have kind of further unraveled, or something that piqued your interest with some of the commentary, please do within the chat, please do provide your questions, and we'll be sure to answer as many as we can for the remaining time that we have. Leading into that and sort of saying at this point, we talked, challenges, we talked opportunities, we've been beginning to talk about some of the way your organizations have respectively been solutioning. So let's kind of move into key takeaways, for an audience, and noting that we have a quite diverse audience and many folks with us today from wearing many different types of hats. So I'd be curious, in terms of your key takeaway, Iris, we'll start with you. Is there any particular that you would say, leaving here around this conversation of data democratization, that organizations should be taking with them as they contemplate the policies, the governance structures, the technologies they're using, the way in which they're securing or providing privacy of, and certainly the kind of consent mechanisms within there, given the conversations we had earlier. So Iris, to you, do you have any particular key takeaways? And certainly I'll likely circle back as we get more questions from the audience.
Yeah, I think it has become very clear through today's conversation that there are a lot of opportunities that we can tap into. There are a lot of challenges as well. And this takeaway hopefully will be applicable to organizations of all sizes and in all industries, in terms of how do we actually make it happen? How do we actually address the challenges and leverage and also create or make the opportunities happen, right? So I would say iterate early, iterate small, and start small, iterate fast, gather feedback along the way. We want to, as an industry in general, we want to avoid the mistakes that Silicon Valley made about 2 decades ago, where teams would potentially perhaps have a lot of really good ideas and thoughts, but spend months or even years building a platform, a strategy, or some methodology before rolling out to the first set of eyes within the potential users and customers. And then the only answer coming back would be, this is not what we need, right? But then it would take a lot of investment upfront. There's a lot of wasted effort, time, and energy, missed opportunities as well. So I think for organizations from small to large, if we start small and then iterate quickly, and also get people's feedback from early on, then you not only make it less daunting to get started, you can also get value out of it early. And also you have this added benefit of getting buy-ins along the way instead of at the having to convince all of your stakeholders. So I think that would be the one takeaway I want to provide at the end of the conversation.
No, that's great. And I, if I could say, you said it very optimistically. Another way potentially to look at it is it allows you to fail fast. And by failing fast, you get to actually provide value back to customers and to your organization accordingly. So sort of on the flip side to your optimism, but great points there. Eric, to you, key takeaway?
Yeah, I liked what Iris said. That was good. For me, let me anchor on the people side of it, because I think that's, when we started a bit of the conversation, and what's the trend or what's new and people's enthusiasm and the appetite. I think that it's core that you have the right people with the right skills in the right place, and that's through a combination of, if you need to bring more people in, then you're looking at people with the ability to code and develop models, which are different things. But then also to be able to tell stories with data. You can find these people, I should call out, and not just the traditional kind of IT computer science roles that people often think of, but there's a host of pure science and technology and beyond sort of backgrounds that you can think of tapping into to leverage. I also suggest that it's not sufficient just to have these technical skills. You also have to have people that can communicate, especially with business folks that may be non-technical, and be able to interpret for them and translate, I think is a core capability. And then conversely, so if you don't have to hire in, but even upskill your existing talent. And there's a tremendous opportunity to do that, and leveraging whether that's enterprise platforms like we have, where we tap into things called like Pluralsight and Percipio and these sort of like these educational kinds of tools, but then leaning into partnerships. And so in Toronto, there's the idea of the Vector Institute, which is an excellent job of upskilling and providing content for individuals to learn more about cutting edge things. So I think having the right people, sort of with the right skill set in the right places, is core to success.
Very good. Thanks, Eric. Before Jeff and David, I get to you with kind of key takeaways, we do have a question from the audience, from the insurance industry. Thoughts on how that particular industry can help with AI risk and mitigation, education and services for Canadian SMEs. I don't know if there's any thoughts or from your respective industries on how the insurance industry can help with AI risk and education. I don't know, Jeff, David, any thoughts on that particular one?
I think that's an interesting question, how a specific industry can help. I think, especially for the insurance side, which may be eventually insuring risk against the improper use of AI or things of that nature that could arise. If that question may have been partially where it came out of. I think going back, Jeff, probably you were talking about advisory before. That might be one area where at least, you have to be careful with this, but the education part to me is the part that is most concerning. Eric's point, look, Coursera, Vector's great, TMLS, which is the Toronto Machine Learning Society. There's a lot of great places here. So I'm amazed sometimes at how literacy in AI is still very low, relatively speaking, amongst the broader population. So I think anything you can do at the beginning to help people understand that component of it is great. I know for us, we do training internally, that's business level training, as well for our board. And so we really look to do that. So I think the messages we convey and those kind of things probably are appropriate even for an insurance company to help people understand the risk. And I'll use one quick example. One of the risks that for our industry you have to be careful of is that if you're using machine learning to actually drive the hiring of a candidate, there are risks inherent in that process, and understanding how to convey those risks to a business so they can understand, again, should I versus can I, and how far they should go, I think is a pretty important part of that. So it's literacy, to me, that's the biggest risk for most businesses. So the basics are really critical from that standpoint.
Very good. And I'll just mention as well, if certainly from an underwriting point of view, like we certainly have seen it with cybersecurity and cyber risk and underwriting cybersecurity insurance policies, certainly around organizations doing more risk mitigation. So being in accordance with or certified against a particular cybersecurity standard could potentially reduce premiums. Similarly, on an AI side, it could be a similar thing in terms of helping to de-risk AI and the liability. Perhaps maybe if there are organizations that are certified and or in accordance with national or international standards around this regard. I think, David, your organization itself has done third-party audit against the more recent international standard ISO IEC 42001 on AI, the AI management system standard. So that potentially is also another area for insurance when they're underwriting various policies, kind of looking at the risk reducing measures that can reduce premiums, always helpful. So that's great. We sort of leaning into the education question. We have Michael, who's an instructor at a college in BC, is looking at actually creating a course for data AI ethics and data/AI governance. The question is, what would you recommend us in education, which typically lags, so 2 to 3 years? We know that AI is much quicker than that in terms of its kind of iterations. How do they keep up with the changes in AI use? And then a question I'll hit you with afterwards after we address that. But Jeff, thoughts, perspectives on the notion of, the quick changes in AI use and how that can feed into perhaps on creating courses around data AI ethics and governance?
Yeah, I would say put an eraser in the textbook because it's probably going to change quarterly. Outside of that, I would say one of the things I think would be helpful to help portray to students or even other educators is just demystifying issues that are out there. So especially for people who aren't in the practice every day, kind of living it, they sort of hear a lot of stuff coming up in the media and all these different outlets. And it's probably trying to help demystify some of that, like similarly be like the use of an LLM. So, when DeepSeek launched, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't put all my data in there because it's going to go back to the owners of that LLM. And really, as you start to host some of those on your own property or you host it with a company that you trust, that risk gets completely eliminated. So I would say the biggest thing is there's probably a lot of information that gets thrown out there. And the biggest thing you could probably do as a professor in this space is help demystify some of those notions. And again, that would probably, I don't envy you because you'll probably have to change that curriculum on a monthly basis, but that's probably one thing I would try to focus on.
Very good. The other question I'll leave you with it. You don't need to answer, but certainly we can get you in touch with Michael. But if you'd be interested in helping to shape that curriculum, noting that it will be ever changing, we can certainly flip to you information from Michael and get you guys engaged there. We're really close near time, so I want to give David and Jeff an opportunity for a key takeaway. Before that, just quickly, because there is another question in the chat around what's the end goal of ethical artificial intelligence. David, I'm going to give this one to you because you have gone through the effort of getting third-party audited against international standard that's talking all about responsible AI and the appropriate management systems and controls that need to be in place. So from your perspective, what is ethical and what is not for AI function, and how as an organization did you look at that kind of consideration as you look to have your organization in accordance with an international standard?
I'm going to try to put it as simply as I can. In talking to our chief privacy officer many times, do no harm. If you want to think about it at its most basic level, do no harm. I think, again, if you look at privacy by design as a foundation for that, I think it does a great job of spelling out, not spelling out because it's tough. Different countries, different organizations, profit-seeking versus non-profit seeking. We're seeing all the conflicts nowadays play out that way. But if you do no harm and you have privacy by design, I think you need to trust that you're using that data in an ethical and honest way. And that would be my quick answer to that. It's probably a much more nuanced question, but that would be my initial context for that.
All right, that's a good takeaway, but I'm coming back for one in a second. Jeff, key takeaway from you.
Key takeaway. I had a person I much trust their opinion from, and one of the things she was sort of a head at risk in a few banking institutions, and her view on this was sometimes too much risk is a risk, or doing too much risk assessment is a risk to your organization. The people in our organization, I probably drive the risk people crazy because we're always trying to push to the latest and greatest and the bleeding edge. But you have to almost balance it in a standpoint of, do I have the basic controls in place to kind of drive value, and then refine that risk as we go. If you're trying to put the greatest risk policies ever in place to make it so secure that nothing will ever happen, you'll probably never get to your end vision. So as you're trying to put that together, you still have to try to generate value as a business or an institution at the same time. So ensuring that sort of that base level of risk is in place, as well as trying to drive value at the same time, has kind of been the goal that we've been trying to strive for.
Great insight. David, last word, key takeaway.
I'll try to make it really quick. Technology changes fast, companies change slow, but change management needs to be a material part of an organization that is looking at this journey. And I say that selfishly because we work so closely with HR teams around the world, but there's this huge demand for thoughtful change management as you go through this process, because the application of these technologies, whether generative or non-generative, will have a large impact on organizations. And I think it's important to consider the person in the loop, the human in the loop, from a change management point of view.
Amazing, great insights from all of you. The audience was engaged. It's great to see, and certainly I'm looking forward to continued conversations around this, given the work we're doing at the Digital Governance Council, and really looking to help shape responsible practices in the market. So again, thank you all to our panelists. Looking forward to remaining in touch and engaged with you. And I'll pass this all back to our friends at the Strategy Institute. Thank you again.